R-Truth has been released from the WWE more exclusively. He has just not had his contract renewed. It's same with Carlito. And Brandon, what did you think when you first heard about R-Truth being released from the WWE this past week?
I was shocked. In all honesty, I was very shocked because I never thought there'd be a time that I jokingly felt like he always had like a lifetime contract with WWE because he's been there. He was there like when the HD era started for WWE. Like it was back in 2008.
He goes back to the Attitude Era, actually, to be honest with you.
Under this gimmick, so to speak. Yes, I actually remember him originally back in, like you mentioned, the Attitude Era as K Quick when he was with Road Dogg. It was K Quick and Road Dogg. They had a tag team. That's going back 25 years plus. I think it was late 90s, early 2000s off the top of my head. But regardless, when I heard the news, I was shocked though because I really thought he's been with WWE for this time, since 2008, I think it was. So it's been almost 20 years and 17 years and change. So for me, it was one of those things where I'm like, why? Like, what are we doing here? And you know what? It is a business. I get it. But I will say, though, I think WWE had this plan all along, and I think they were doing it. And again, I have no insight. I don't have anybody inside the WWE headquarters or anything, TKO and all that. I don't have anybody there. But my gut feeling is this was kind of coming because they gave R-Truth the best swan song you could ask for, just about, where he got to be on NBC's Saturday Night's Main Event, and he got to have a match with John Cena as his, before he, was set.
Yes.
It was great. Like, to me, I just, I look back in hindsight, and I think WWE did him a solid by doing that. And here's the thing. I really believe the best is yet to come for R-Truth because he's charismatic as hell. He still looks great. He's still got the athleticism that, we all know and love about R-Truth. I think wherever he goes, he's going to land on his feet, and whatever he does, whether it's wrestling, AEW with TNA. I don't think it'll be TNA. I think it'll be AEW if I had to guess. But he could do like a podcast. Like he could go into that space and do some fun stuff there because everything that he does, he's just so charismatic. Anything he does, I enjoy. So whatever he does next, I'll be looking forward to.
I mean, TNA obviously would be interesting just because what we've talked about on the past on this show about the idea that they're still tied in with WWE. So he'd be right back on WWE. It'd be just like he got demoted to NXT, essentially, if you pick TNA. Do you think that R-Truth maybe wanted this per se so that he could work more? What I'm thinking about is WWE, right? We talked about how we never thought he wouldn't be in WWE. And I don't know necessarily what a Legends contract entails, but, I don't see why in this sense of the word that we wouldn't just give him whatever they're giving the honky tonk man and essentially a Legends contract of saying, hey, we're not necessarily going to use you too much, but hey, we haven't really used you too much to begin with, right? We sometimes don't see him on TV for months at a time. And when we do see him on TV, again, it's sporadic. So do you think WWE might have thought, hey, we can give you a Legends contract and essentially use you in the sense of the way we used Tatanka or Honky Tonk Man, and maybe once in a blue moon you come out on TV, you're just in the audience, you wave, you're in the backstage, something where it's like a low-level $10,000 a year kind of thing where we give you like 10 grand and then you show up every so often? Or do you think he's like, no, I'm too young for that, maybe down the line, but I still want a full contract and full work?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that because he doesn't have the wear and tear that you would think, being in WWE, over the years, almost 20 years, because you just mentioned it. You just alluded to it. He works infrequently. Like he was used here and there. So to me, that tells me that his age, he's in his 50s, but that doesn't mean like the wear and tear is in his 50s. He still looks great. Like when he had that last match with Cena, he still looked as good as he did, say 10 years ago. Like he still looks the part, and so I could see that. I could see where he could be like, yeah, I'm in my 50s, but I feel great. I want to go do a run somewhere else and maybe do more full time. Maybe that's what he wants to do. But, don't be surprised if somebody tries to pick him up as a podcaster. Maybe he jumps on Sirius XM for all we know. I mean, we've seen that crossover. I know you listen to Sirius XM, and you've seen Natalia doing things on there. So maybe there's something there. Maybe there's a podcast because everybody's got a podcast now. We've had a podcast for a while. I mean, whatever he does, it's going to be good because it's R-Truth. He's charismatic. He's fun.
Do you see R-Truth showing up elsewhere differently in the sense of, a more hardened, gritty character? Or do you see the silly R-Truth showing up wherever he goes? Like, let's say he goes to AEW. Do you see him coming into AEW and just straight off the bat being like, hey, it's Nick Khan. I mean, Nick Khan, right? Tony Khan. What are you, Nick's little brother? Like stuff like that? Or do you see him coming in as more like the Ron the Truth Killings we saw in TNA back in the day, as NWA World Heavyweight Champion kind of guy?
That's a great question. I mean, that's something. That's the $1 million question. He could go either way, and it's kind of funny you mentioned that with the whole Nick Khan, Tony Khan thing, because R-Truth could really do that to Tony Khan. Like it's something he could probably do and get away with because we know his character. Like he just he looks at like Tommaso Ciampa as Triple H. Like he does like these type of things, so it would be in character. But maybe you're right though. Maybe you've alluded to it. Maybe this is a fresh coat of paint for him. Maybe he wants to explore other avenues because he's been this comedic character for so long now. Like it's been so long since he was Ron the Truth Killings in TNA that maybe he wants to get back to that, and maybe a place like AEW could give him that. So that's the $1 million question. Regardless of what he does, you give him like chicken shit, he's gonna make chicken salad out of it. Like that's just the kind of guy he is.
Now with Carlito, do you feel like now that he's been released as well, there should have been more of an explanation? Obviously, they've been doing a lot with him in the Judgment Day. Not a lot in the sense of tons of matches or anything. He's had some matches, but he's been involved. He's been in the foreground of the Judgment Day for a while. He was on television as recent as the Judgment Day was on television prior to this announcement. Do you think they should have kind of found a way to write him off TV?
Yeah, I think they should have. I think something should have happened where, they should have, maybe it was an injury, something happened. Maybe he got, maybe somehow he got kicked out of the Judgment Day and he was kind of left on an island and that was it, and then farewell. Like, yeah. And the other part of it too, like I loved, I don't know if it was a sense of humor because it came off kind of tongue in cheek to me, at least, about like he owes them money. Like I think that was more of a joke, but maybe I'm reading that wrong because I guess that's the way I interpreted it. But he seems like he's in good spirits about it. So whatever the case may be, I think he'll land on his feet. He'll probably go back to Puerto Rico and make a ton of money because they love him down there, and the beach life is pretty good. I think it's been good to him over the years. So again, I think this will be good for all parties involved.
Carlito's an interesting character, and he kind of always has been because he's been a mid-carder going, all the way back in the day. He was a mid-carder. We had talked about how in the 2020 Royal Rumble during COVID, he made a surprise return where he looked more jacked than ever. But I say he's an interesting character in the sense of he's very much, it's probably similar to like R-Truth in the sense of what we just talked about, because remember R-Truth fought John Cena for the World Heavyweight Championship on a pay-per-view not too long ago. And yeah, he wasn't the R-Truth that we know nowadays that was the fun-loving, but he was still he wasn't the main event player that we ever really affiliated R-Truth with. Maybe sometime during TNA we affiliated that with him, but for the most part, he's always been kind of a mid-carder, even when he was teaming with The Miz, doing that whole thing, in which that was the time he had that World Heavyweight Championship match. But Carlito's been the same in the sense that we've always kind of alluded to him as a mid-carder, but he's got a few World Heavyweight title matches in there. He was in the Elimination Chamber at 2006's New Year's Revolution. He was very similar to like a Chris Masters at the time, where like you never really saw him ever as the face of the company. If there was a top 10 people you wanted on the poster to sell tickets, it would be very hard pressed for him to be in that top 10, even if you're talking brand exclusive like Raw or SmackDown. But he was always in the mix. He was always in the fold. And his latest run was very similar in the sense that he's on TV every single week, and we kind of take him very seriously in that role. But he's bigger than Tozawa, for sure, but he's not John Cena, and he's somewhere in between. Some days he feels like Tozawa, some days he feel like he could be near John Cena, but he's always been somewhere in between. So him and R-Truth, very similar in their characters. Obviously, R-Truth found a way to maximize that character, I think, the best. Because, he's not really considered a main eventer, but we love it every time he's on the scene. We would never think of him being in the WrestleMania main event. And there's years like this year, right, where he's not on the WrestleMania card and we don't bat an eye at it. But at the same time, when he is on the card, or we do see him in general, not even on the card, we're entertained. Carlito is close to that in that facet. So two interesting.
One last point on R-Truth. I hope to see some people maybe take that R-Truth approach, because he made a lot of money in almost 20 years, in this last run, and he wasn't used often, but he made a good living, and he's got a following. Like, you don't have to have the John Cena credentials to have a great career. I think R-Truth's had a great career, and I think some talent should look and be like, yeah, like I can make chicken salad out of chicken shit, so to speak, and have a prosperous career and make a lot of money doing it.
I think R-Truth, whether it's careers outside of WWE, my own personal career, your personal career, athletes in general, you find that sweet spot where you can somehow be. Here's the thing, like with WWE, one day you're a main eventer, the next day you're not on the card at all, right? We see this with like Scott Steiner and his run in 2002 with WWE, in 2003. That's similar to like with your job, right? You see people come and you're like, man, they're going to be the next supervisor, they're going to be the next owner of this company, and the next day they're gone, because like you burn real bright and then you burn out. R-Truth is a good example of like what I think of like a kicker in football, you know what I mean? Or like a special teams player, where it's like, Tom Brady or is in there as a quarterback and he's the face of this company. He's going to make a lot of money in a short period of time. But these other guys, it's like slow and steady win the race. R-Truth found a way to, always somehow be relevant. He didn't need to be on every card. He was not on most cards, but he found a way to just still like exist within the company. And that's what made him last so long.
And he made a lot of money over these years. And like for the amount of money he made, he wasn't utilized as much as a lot of the other superstars. So like, that's not a bad way of making a living. You're wear and tear on your bodies, not as much as some of the other people. And you've made a ton of money doing it. Kudos to Ron Killings, R-Truth.
Just like a kicker in football, the wear and tear on your body, not as much. You've got to last a lot longer than others. And you've made less money per year, but more money overall, right? And a lot of other people, right, in those positions would be the ones that are wanting to fight for their spot. And that creates that contention of them asking for their releases so they can go to other places, whether it's, John Moxley's of the world, CM Punk's over time, right? They're hungry for that top spot. They're ultra competitive. R-Truth, not necessarily. I mean, I don't necessarily know what's going on behind the scenes, but for the most part, I imagine, right, he's not ultra competitive. He's okay with where he fits in that mold. And somebody who maybe not necessarily and maybe is a little more ultra competitive has recently come over to the WWE side of things. Mariah May made her debut in NXT on Tuesday night. There is word she's gonna be rebranded, so we'll talk about that in just a second, of maybe some ideas of what Mariah May will be called. But hey, she was just AEW World Champion Women's, not underutilized in that sense, right? She's main eventing a stadium show, essentially with Toni Storm last year, the match of the night on that stadium show. And here she is in WWE. How long do you expect her to be in NXT? Do you expect her to be the new face of NXT now that some top stars have moved on to the main roster very quickly? Or do you expect her to do the same and move away from NXT sooner rather than later?
I think she might have that Stephanie Vaquer, Julia kind of ascend. I feel like she was a star in AEW, and you just mentioned it. She had that hell of a match with Toni Storm. Not that long ago. It wasn't that far back, and now she's in WWE. And it, I guess the plan. It seemed like the plan all along for her was, and actually it kind of reminds me of what superstars did back in the '90s. They would, maybe WWE wasn't looking at them. They went to WCW. They knew they weren't going to stay in WWE for a while, but they wanted to go. They went to WCW, which was essentially at times the second tier, but they own their skills, and hopefully at some point get a call from WWE and say, "Hey, we want you." You leave WCW and you go to WWE or WWF at the
Are
time.
you saying Mariah May wasn't taken seriously when she was a shop zone model, if you will, in WWE, essentially just being utilized to take pictures of her in a Seth Rollins t-shirt or a Drew McIntyre shirt for the website?
Yeah, I honestly, I think to a point, I think that was her way of, she went from that point, obviously, to AEW to where she is now. I think she knew what she needed to do, and she's done it, and I give her a lot of credit for that. And she wanted. It seemed like the plan all along was she wanted to be back in WWE. So I think AEW was the stepping stone for her to get, to show WWE personnel, TKO personnel, like, hey, I'm a star. When my contract's up, I want to come work for you. And guess what? She's made it happen. And I think she'll be the face of NXT sooner rather than later. I just feel bad for, what's her name? JC Jane, who's the new champion. Like, she's been there for like almost 5 years, and she finally got a chance to get gold. And now Mariah May is, she's making her debut. It's like JC Jane's worked her ass off for, 4 or 5 years now. And I think JC Jane's title run is going to be short because I think Mariah May's taking that title very, very
Now, we
soon.
talk about names for Mariah May. I think of Ricky Starks, who's now Ricky Saints. So in that vein, what do we see with Mariah May? I'm thinking Mariah June.
Mariah June. I don't know. That's a little tacky for me. I mean, I don't know. They might just call her Mariah.
That seems like a cop-out answer, but that seems like a cop-out answer, not from you, but from something that WWE would indeed do.
I'm thinking like WWE would. I'm just saying.
Yes. Mariah Main, something like that, right? You could.
See that could work, because she's the main event, so to speak. That could work. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, you could. Now that she's not over in AEW, and we all know Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné is over there. Moné is money. You know what I mean? It could be like, it could be Mariah Moné. What if they did that? That would just be kind of a diss on AEW, but I could see them doing it.
Well, here the other thing is too. It's like, what if? Because how there's those reports that come out every so often where WWE's trademark names. Mm-hmm. Maybe I don't know if they trademarked any particular names for her. I'm just curious to see how that falls.
Yeah, well, we will see. But Mariah May in the WWE, R-Truth and Carlito are now out of the WWE as of this week.